Especially when you got delicious McDonald's hamburgers.
Ronald, you can't be on TV and watch it at the same time. Now come on and meet the boys and girls.
Oh, we've already met.
The name Ray Kroc may not ring a bell, but I'm sure you've heard of the massive food chain McDonald's. It's one of the most American brands in the world, right up there next to Coca-Cola and Disney. Operating over 30,000 restaurants in more than 100 countries, McDonald's is arguably the most successful restaurant in the entire world. Ray Kroc is often credited with its global expansion, and some, including McDonald's, even go as far as calling him the founder.
English-American word, it flowed, McDonald's.
But while the savvy Ray may have been the one who took McDonald's to such a grand scale, the real founders were actually two brothers, Richard and Maurice McDonald. This is their story. After watching this video, you'll never see McDonald's the same way again. And all along the way, you'll learn about a special principle that can drastically increase your return on investments. The adage that greatness is born out of adversity was certainly true for Richard and Maurice McDonald. The brothers were born into a poor family of Irish immigrants in rural New Hampshire, a state in the New England region of the United States. It was the early 1900s, and times were tough. The brothers saw their father struggle later in life, and it was something that would stay with them forever. His whole life, their father, Patrick McDonald, had worked hard as a shift manager at his shoe factory. But after 42 years, he was suddenly laid off. After decades of hard work, his employer simply told him he had become too old to do the job. Learning their father had been fired without a pension had an enormous impact on the brothers, and they knew staying in their New Hampshire community wouldn't lead to a prosperous life. We made up our minds that one way or another, we'd be financially independent, Dick McDonald once recalled. Not wanting to follow in their father's footsteps, the brothers vowed to be millionaires by age 50. And with nothing more than a pair of high school diplomas, they began setting out to make their dreams come true. After numerous failed stints, they started their first fast food stand in 1940, but they wouldn't achieve real success with it until 8 years later. That's when the brothers converted their drive-through barbecue restaurant into a burger and milkshake joint. The very first McDonald's was born. The reason for this change was the discovery that 85% of their business came from 3 out of the 27 products they offered. So, to save time and money, they culled the majority of their products and sold only fries, burgers, and shakes. This is called the Pareto principle, and following it can truly be a game changer. Also known as the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle asserts that 80% of outcomes result from 20% of all causes. In business, a goal of this rule is to identify which of your products and services are delivering you the greatest ROI and make them a priority, and you eliminate the rest. Offering a limited menu gave the brothers a strong competitive advantage as it allowed them to focus on quality and quick service. They were selling their goods for half the price and in half the time of competing restaurants. And to cut costs even further, they also changed the way their burger shop operated. They turned it into a mechanized assembly line, with each step in the process being stripped down to its essence and accomplished with minimum effort. Instead of cooking each meal to order, they prepared their burgers ahead of time and kept the food warm under high-powered heat lamps. They also got rid of the car hops and indoor seating, and instead of relying on waiters, they installed a self-service counter where customers could order directly. You might recognize this as the basic design of the modern fast food industry, but at the time, it gave McDonald's an overwhelming edge against its traditional competitors. By concentrating on keeping costs low, the brothers could maintain low prices for a consistently good product. This, in turn, led to a high rate of customer turnover. Our whole concept was based on speed, lower prices, and volume, Richard McDonald recalled. We were going after big volumes by lowering prices and by having the customer serve himself. Not long after revamping the operations of their hamburger stand and developing the quick-serve method that would make them famous, The brothers were pulling $100,000 a year in profits. Then, Ray Kroc entered the picture. Ray Kroc is a spunky salesman from Illinois, a state in the Midwestern region of the United States. Born in 1902 to Czechoslovakian immigrants, he rose from humble beginnings. When he was just 15 years old, he lied about his age to serve in World War I as a Red Cross ambulance driver. If you watched our video on Walt Disney, you already know that Walt lied about his age for the same reason. And what's more, the two Illinois native entrepreneurs actually met while training for the Red Cross. After serving in the war, Ray mainly worked in sales. And after a successful career selling paper cups, he moved on to become a traveling milkshake machine salesman. Ray and the McDonald's Brothers' paths crossed in 1954 after they bought 8 milkshake machines. The 5-spindled multi-mixers made 5 shakes at a time, and they sold at $150 a piece, which was a hefty price back then. This little fellow came in with a high voice, recalled Richard McDonald in a 1991 interview. He says, "My name is Ray Kroc. My brother and I were impressed with him. He was a very aggressive guy. That's the type it takes to sell anything." But Ray's interest was also piqued, and curious to see who on earth would need so many milkshakes at once, he decided to pay the brothers a visit. As Ray sat in his car seat, he watched a miracle unfold. The parking lot was full, the lines were long, and customers were leaving with big smiles on their faces. Ray was blown away by the low prices and the effectiveness of the restaurant's operation. And as he famously said, visions of McDonald's restaurants dotting crossroads all over the country paraded through his brain. Being the businessman that he was, Ray couldn't help but think how much money he would make if there were hundreds of McDonald's across the country, each equipped with 8 of the milkshake machines that he sold. Although many sources claim that Ray brought the idea of franchising to McDonald's, the true story reveals something different. By the time they met, the two brothers already had numerous franchises. But when Ray got wind that the brothers were looking for help expanding, he was eager to volunteer. The previous franchising agent, Bill Tansey, had quit due to health issues. In seeing a good business opportunity, Ray proposed that he work as a franchising agent in exchange for a small slice of the profits. While the McDonald's brothers had come up with some great ideas, it didn't take long before Ray took over. He successfully unleashed the chain's true franchising potential, and he introduced standardization, automation, and discipline. A true workaholic, Ray was clocking in many hours a day, and for some time, he was basically doing all of the franchising work while the brothers sat back and collected the profits. But that was soon to change. Ray was so eager to see the restaurant expand that he made a hasty deal. And while he was busy selling the franchises, the brothers were able to make a lot of money for basically doing nothing. All they had to do was collect royalties. Once you have a good brand and modeling that works well with customers, the concept of franchising is very appealing. You provide the name, image, procedures, product, and some training. They do the rest of the work, and you receive royalties. The amount of capital needed to grow a franchising operation is minimal, which makes it even more appealing from a return on investment standpoint. From day one, Ray made sure that franchising was the main focus. He wanted to build a restaurant system that would be famous for providing food of consistently high quality and uniform methods of preparation. He wanted to serve burgers, fries, and beverages that tasted just the same in Alaska as they did in Alabama. To achieve this, he chose a unique path, persuading both franchisees and suppliers to buy into his vision. He wanted people working not for McDonald's, but for themselves, together with McDonald's. He promoted the slogan, "In business for yourself, but not by yourself." And his philosophy was based on the simple principle of a 3-legged stool. One leg was McDonald's franchisees, the second, McDonald's suppliers, and the third, McDonald's employees. The stool was only as strong as the 3 legs that formed its foundation. Ray always maintained a delicate balance between the top-down, system-wide standards and a decentralized entrepreneurial environment at both the franchise and corporate level. And throughout its history, McDonald's has remained intimately involved in the development of their operators' locations. However, before Ray could even begin selling franchises, he had built his own McDonald's to perfect all of the procedures. He went 50-50 with a friend on a location in Des Plaines, Illinois, which opened its doors on April 15, 1955. All the cost and time-saving mechanisms had to be the same, but most of all, Ray was adamant about maintaining the consistent quality of the food. Although the Des Plaines location wasn't doing as well as the original McDonald's in San Bernardino, the restaurant had made money from day one, and Ray was now confident enough to start lining up other franchisees. In no time, he turned it into a mass market. Through his agreement with the McDonalds Brothers, Ray was earning a paltry 1.9% of the gross revenues of all McDonald's franchises, while 25% went to the brothers. Ray figured something had to be done to earn extra income. Not much later, the company's financial wizard, Harry Sonborn, came up with another way of making money that would not involve selling hamburgers. Why didn't they create a real estate company that would buy up the land on which all McDonald's would be located? Then, franchisees would pay Ray a monthly rental fee for the land, or a percentage of their sales, whichever was greater. To execute the plan, Ray founded the Franchise Realty Corporation. As soon as the operators began paying ever-increasing monthly rent, Franchise Realty soon became one of McDonald's biggest generators of profit. It was basically a predecessor of the McDonald's Corporation, and its founding helped to facilitate the restaurant's expansion while giving Ray a healthier return on his efforts. Ray also became president of McDonald's in 1955, but he continually clashed with the brothers, and despite the new income, he was unhappy about his agreement. So, in 1961, he asked them to name their price and bought out all their shares. Now both the company and the name belong to him. The price? $2.7 million. That is nearly $23 million. Ray viewed the brothers' offer as outlandish, but he was dead set on owning the entire McDonald's chain, so he borrowed cash from several different sources to meet the asking price. In a 1993 interview, he said, "I needed the McDonald name and those golden arches. What are you going to do with a name like Kroc?" But while Ray may have balked at the price, in hindsight, the buyout would turn out to be one of the best investments he would ever make. The McDonald's Brothers' deal to sell Ray the rights to their growing business wasn't without its fair share of controversies. As soon as they sold their company, Ray began crediting himself with being the founder. Suddenly, after we sold, my golly, he elevated himself to the founder, said Richard McDonald. Ray further reinforced his claim of being the founder in his 1977 biography, Grinding It Out: The Making of McDonald's. In it, he largely traces McDonald's origin to his own first McDonald's restaurant in Des Plaines, Illinois. Considering Ray's Des Plaines restaurant didn't open until 7 years after the McDonald's brother opened the original San Bernardino location, this was clearly a figment of his imagination, at best. But that's not all. When Ray realized that his deal to buy the brothers did not include the original McDonald's restaurant in San Bernardino, he became furious. He couldn't believe he'd been cut out of the iconic and profitable location. "I was so mad I wanted to throw a vase through the window," he recalled. "I hated their guts." Since Ray now owned the rights to the McDonald's name, the brothers had no other choice than to rename their original restaurant the Big M. But Ray was out for revenge, and a simple name change didn't satisfy him. He opened a brand new McDonald's a block away, and after 6 years, it put the Big M out of business. Ray felt proud. In speaking about the event, he once gleefully said, "I ran him out of business." There's no question that Ray had a monumental impact on making McDonald's a fast food phenomenon. But what made the brothers angry was that they were never given credit for many, many years. They were simply erased from history. And it seems like Ray himself believed that the brothers were largely insignificant to the restaurant's history. While Richard came to accept how things worked out, the whole saga brought Maurice down, and he eventually passed away in 1971 from heart failure. It goes to show that you never truly know how a company will turn out. And while the brothers had seen McDonald's grow under Ray's watch, they didn't know that it would one day be a major international corporation. When you consider that going into business with Ray led to them losing out on millions, it would be understandable for Richard to be bitter too. But oddly enough, he wasn't resentful at all, and he even said he never regretted looking out on the fortune that Ray amassed. I would have wound up in some skyscraper somewhere with about 4 ulcers and 8 tax attorneys trying to figure out how to pay all my income tax, he once said. In all his interviews over the years, Richard never uttered one bad word about Ray. And in fact, whenever his old business partner's name was mentioned, it was only with kind words. The details of what happened and who earns the title of being the true creator of McDonald's success depends on whom you ask. For years, the company itself celebrated Founders Day by honoring founder Ray Kroc. However, in 1991, they decided to honor the McDonald brothers too. McDonald's then senior chairman Fred Turner said the following: "They are founders. They founded the concept, but Ray Kroc founded the company that developed the concept into the largest fast food service organization in the world." One thing is certain though, the fast food chain is one of the most easily recognized, well-known brands in the world. In fact, you'll be hard-pressed to find someone who hasn't at least heard of McDonald's, and most have visited a franchise more than a couple of times. The things we can learn from this story are numerous. Let us know whose side you're on, the McDonald brothers who were the original founders, or the savvy, some would say sneaky, Ray Kroc, who elevated the franchise to a whole new level. Is there a business that you would like us to cover next? Make sure to let us know, and don't forget to check out our channel for more inspiring business stories.